The year was 1969. If you were a soldier hunkered down in the triple-canopy jungles of South Vietnam, you lived in a world defined by the sensory. You knew the smell of damp earth and rot, the heavy weight of the humidity against your skin, and the oppressive, ringing silence of the forest at midnight. But for many North Vietnamese soldiers, that silence was about to be shattered by something far more terrifying than a B-52 strike or an infantry charge. It was a sound that didn't aim for the body, but for the soul. Understand the Yo, man, this is boring as hell. Hold on. Hello, everyone, meaning SELOM. My name is Roy, and I will be doing my podcast here and now. So, here we go. To understand the military operation known as Wandering Soul, you first have to understand the spiritual landscape of Vietnam. In Vietnamese culture, death is not merely an end. It is a transition that requires strict adherence to a tradition. It is believed that a person must be buried in their ancestral homeland with the proper rites performed by their family for their soul to find peace. If a person dies violently, if their body is lost, or if they're buried in an unmarked grave far from home, they are condemned to become a wandering soul. These spirits are thought to roam the earth in eternal pain, invisible and hungry, crying out to the living for a peace they can never achieve. Now, the United States 6th Psychological Operations Battalion spent months studying these beliefs. They weren't looking for cultural understanding for the sake of diplomacy. They were looking for a soft spot in the enemy's psyche. They realized that while an NVA soldier might be willing to die for his cause, the idea of being spiritually exiled for eternity was an unbearable prospect. So they decided to weaponize that fear. The centerpiece of this effort was a recording that became legendary in the annals of psychological warfare, which is called Ghost Tape Number 10. And I'm gonna play it right here. That's some scary shit, yeah? Alright. This wasn't a simple propaganda message recorded on a handheld device, like what I'm kind of doing right now. It was a high-production horror soundscape created in a studio in Saigon. Engineers used voice actors, echoes, and distortion to create a chilling, otherworldly effect. The tape would begin with the mournful sounds of Vietnamese funeral music, the sharp clatter of gongs, and the wail of traditional flutes. Then through the static, a voice would emerge. It was a voice of a man representing a dead NVA soldier. He spoke in a haunting echo tone, calling to his friends and comrades. He told them he was dead, that his body was rotting, alone in the jungle, and that he was currently in hell. The script was agonizingly specific. The ghost would plead with his living friends to desert the army and go home to their families while they still had time. My friends, the voice would moan, I have come back to let you know that I am dead. It is hell. Hell. At the climax of the recording, the voice of a young girl would drift in, meant to be the soldier's daughter, crying out for a father who would never return. It ended with a It ended with a cacophony of screams and the soldier's desperate pleas for his comrades to save themselves from his fate. The deployment of these tapes was as surreal as the recordings themselves. The U.S. military outfitted Huey helicopters with massive 1,000-watt speaker arrays. Under the cover of total darkness, these speaker birds would fly low and slow over the jungle canopy. They would broadcast Ghost Tape Number 10 into the valleys and base camps of the Viet Cong. In other areas, ground teams would sneak portable speakers near enemy lines, hidden in the brush, so the voices seemed to be rising directly from the earth. Now, imagine the psychological toll. You were a young man, like me, hundreds of miles from your village, exhausted, malnourished, and surrounded by death. In the middle of the night, the very trees seem to start screaming at you in your own language, echoing your deepest cultural terrors, even if the logical part of your brain told you it was an American trick. The primal, spiritual part of your mind couldn't ignore the omen. Now, the effectiveness of Operation Wandering Soul is still debated by military historians today. There are documented accounts of NVA soldiers surrendering in the state of visible tremors after a night of broadcasts. Some units were reportedly so unnerved that they abandoned strategic positions just to get away from the sound. It created a sense of spiritual attrition, wearing down the will to fight by attacking the soldiers' sense of cosmic safety. However, the operation had a significant tactical drawback. Sound works both ways. When a helicopter flew over the jungle blaring high decibel funeral music, it acted like a giant acoustic flare. The Viet Cong quickly realized that while the ghost couldn't be killed with bullets, the speakers certainly could. NVA's units frequently responded to the broadcast with intense anti-aircraft fire, aiming directly for the source of the sound. Even among American troops, the operation was polarizing. Some U.S. infantrymen found the tapes so disturbing that they requested the broadcast to be stopped near their own camps. The sound of a screaming ghost echoing through the dark was just as effective at keeping American teenagers awake as it was the enemy. It cast a macabre. What the world is that word? Hold on. Hold on. We're gonna read that again. Hold on. Macabre. Pronunciation.
Macabre.
What? It cast a
Macabre.
power over the theater of war, turning the jungle into a literal haunted house. Operation Wandering Soul eventually wound down as the conflict evolved, but its legacy remains a haunting example of how far a military would go to win the hearts and minds, or in this case, the fears and souls of an opponent. Hold on. I'm going off right now. Hold on. It represents a moment where modern technology was used to exploit these ancient echoes. When you listen to the surviving snippets of Ghost Tape number 10 today, it's easy to dismiss it as cheesy or theatrical, right? Theatrical. But if you close your eyes and imagine hearing those wails through the humid, pitch black darkness of a 1916 jungle, you begin to understand the power of the wandering soul. It was a reminder that in war, the most effective weapon isn't always the one that draws blood. Sometimes, it's the one that makes you afraid to die.